Let me ask you something. When you feel completely helpless, because some vicious, calculated slander is attacking your reputation, your
Yeah.
peace.
Right, maybe even your livelihood.
Exactly. How do you defend yourself? I mean, do you fight fire with fire? Do you take matters into your own hands? Or do you find a way to keep your spiritual rest through all that chaos? We're going to find the answer to that very question today by diving deep into a timeless source of wisdom. It's a resource that teaches us how to fight this very specific modern pain point with an ancient, perfect strategy. Welcome to the Pilgrim's Rest channel. Our purpose is to introduce spiritual books that have been passed down through the generations, so that every saint walking the heavenly journey may find rest, nourishment, and renewed strength here.
And today's deep dive takes us right into the experience of King David,
Yeah.
specifically Psalm 7. And we'll be looking at it through the comprehensive and insightful commentary of Charles H. Spurgeon's classic, The Treasury of David. The psalm has a title that, well, it immediately sets the stage for the complexity of the believer's life. Shiggaion of David.
Shiggaion. That's an unusual word.
It is. Spurgeon suggests it translates to variable songs. And just think about that. It perfectly encapsulates the reality of the spiritual journey, which is, it's never a straight line. Sometimes the song is this sublime meter of triumph, but often the song limps with a broken rhythm of complaint. As Spurgeon puts it so well, there is much bass in the saint's music here below.
That detail about the variable song, that bass note, that is exactly why this deep dive feels so relevant. Our experience isn't static, and we need a song for when things are difficult, when the rhythm is broken.
Yeah, it's absolutely a song for hard days.
Yeah.
And the occasion for this psalm is, well, it's incredibly specific and painful. It was prompted by someone called Cush the Benjamite. Now, he likely accused David of treason to King Saul.
Wow, so this wasn't just gossip. This was a direct political and potentially lethal threat.
Exactly, and that's precisely why Spurgeon gives it this amazing title, The Song of the Slandered Saint. It deals with one of the worst kinds of evil, the calculated destruction of character.
The insight there is just incredible, that we are taught how to take the sorest of evils, slander, and turn it into a theme for a song. It's a spiritual maneuver for, turning the tables upon our great enemy. It reminds me of Martin Luther, who faced incredible opposition and just said, in effect, David made psalms, we also will make psalms and sing them as well as we can to spite and mock the devil.
It's a complete divine strategy, and we see it laid out in the structure of the psalm. It's less of a story and more of a legal strategy applied to the throne of God. It moves from prayer and faith through a solemn avowal of innocence.
And then a bold appeal to God's judgment.
Right. And then that leads into God's threat to the wicked, and finally this marvelous reversal where its slanderer is defeated by his own devices.
Okay, let's unpack this strategy, starting with phase 1, the Slandered Saint's appeal and the proof of integrity. That's verses 1 through 5.
Right.
So when the attack comes, the first step isn't to look outward, but to anchor yourself. David opens with that foundational declaration, "O Lord my God, in thee do I put my trust." He establishes his reliance upon God, and in thee only.
That trust is paramount because of the danger involved. David immediately follows his faith with a plea of fear in verse 2, which really drives the urgency. He fears a mighty foe. For him it was Saul, but for us it represents the full force of the evil one.
Or any organized malice, really.
Yes, and this foe is like a lion, rending it in pieces while there is none to deliver.
And that image is so powerful. It just perfectly captures the speed and the finality of slander today.
Yeah.
When social media gets a hold of a lie, it feels exactly like being torn apart piece by piece with nowhere to hide.
The threat is not an exaggeration at all. We often focus on physical harm, but the wounds of the tongue, they cut deeper than the flesh and are not soon cured.
Yeah.
And that's the brutal reality of reputation. We might succeed in disproving a lie, but like Spurgeon notes, even if it's disproved, slander often leaves a slur. The wounds stay. There's an ancient insight that says, good repute is like the cypress. Once cut, it never puts forth leaf again.
It's an incredibly fragile thing, so if our reputation is that fragile and the attack is so fierce, what is the believer's necessary internal defense?
Well, David moves from a plea to a protestation in verses 3 through 5. He makes a solemn, even daring, appeal to the highest court, heaven, to judge his internal state.
What does he say?
He offers the framework of his challenge in verse 3. O Lord my God, if I have done this, if there be iniquity in my hands. He's essentially saying, if I am guilty of this treason I'm accused of, let the absolute worst punishment fall on me. That is radical sincerity.
But that kind of radical sincerity only works if his life actually backed it up. What was his proof of integrity?
His actions were the proof. David wasn't just not guilty of treason. He had actively delivered his enemy. He had spared Saul's life twice.
Right, in the cave and then in the camp.
Exactly. David was meticulous about respecting the Lord's anointed. He had done good to the very person seeking his ruin.
That raises a really painful point for you, the listener. David was scrupulously innocent. He went above and beyond to show integrity, and he was still violently slandered. So what does that teach us?
It teaches us that integrity is not a shield against attack, but it is the foundation of our spiritual resilience. You can't control the lying tongues of others. As the saying goes, as the shadow follows the substance, so envy pursues goodness.
You'll be attacked precisely because you strive to be good.
That's often the case.
So the takeaway from this first part is that the only defense we can truly control is our own conscience. If we've been diligent, then that clear conscience becomes a flowing spring of assurance.
Exactly. That inner conviction is the strength you need for the next move, which is calling for the divine judge. We shift from self-defense to divine intervention.
This brings us to phase 2. The judge on the throne, covering verses 6 through 11. David moves from looking at his own actions to demanding the intervention of the only one who can truly settle the score.
And he prays with great spiritual boldness, "Arise, O Lord, in thine anger." He is asking God, the ultimate judge, to step onto the stage of human affairs and take command.
And this isn't just a personal prayer, right? It's a plea for public justice.
Right. He fortifies it in verse 7 by including the whole community. He says, "So shall the congregation of the people compass thee about. For their sakes, therefore, return thou on high."
So he knows that when God judges injustice, multitudes of saints will be blessed and vindicated.
Yes. He's appealing not just for himself, but for the principle of righteousness among the people.
That elevates the prayer completely. It goes from a private grievance to a public concern for God's honor. And then he confidently approaches the divine tribunal in verse 8, crying out, "Judge me, O Lord, according to my righteousness and according to mine integrity that is in me."
And in the name of every saint who has ever been maligned, he cries out the universal petition in verse 9, "O let the wickedness of the wicked come to an end, but establish the just." This is the ultimate longing of the elect.
And this is where the depth of the divine judge becomes so clear. The basis for this judgment is that weighty truth at the end of verse 9. The righteous God trieth the hearts and reins.
That phrase, hearts and reins, is such a critical nugget of knowledge from the Hebrew. We get the hearts part, our secret thoughts, intentions. But the reins, the original word referring to the kidneys, that denotes the inward affections, the deepest, most instinctive motivations we barely even admit to ourselves.
So to put that in modern terms, you're saying God isn't just checking our public actions or our careful thoughts. He's doing a forensic audit of our entire spiritual hard drive.
That's a great way to put it. He finds the root causes, the hidden files we thought we'd deleted.
Wow.
The divine knowledge is accurate beyond human measure. Spurgeon references an insight that God finds things the heart itself ne'er found. If David's integrity can pass that level of scrutiny, his vindication is absolute.
And that's the assurance we need. The persecuted one is cleared because his defense isn't human. Verse 10 is magnificent. "My defense is of God, which saveth the upright in heart." The truth, like oil, will always rise to the top. It can't be drowned by the enemy's lies.
And this clearance of the righteous provides a necessary, sharp contrast with God's daily posture toward the unrepentant sinner in verse 11. God is angry with the wicked every day.
That phrase, angry every day, is jarring. Does that mean the ungodly never have any peace or enjoyment?
It means they have no safe days. Spurgeon argues strongly for this. They may have many feast days, many moments of earthly triumph, but from the beginning of the year to its end, there's not one single hour in which they are safe or truly resting under divine favor. That anger is a settled, continuous reality.
A constant preparation for judgment. That sets up our final strategic phase perfectly. If God is constantly prepared for judgment, then what does that look like when it's finally executed?
We transition now to phase 3, the wicked's folly and defeat, verses 12 through 16. This details the prepared vengeance for those who refuse to repent, emphasizing that the consequence is, well, it's self-inflicted.
The choice for the wicked is laid out so starkly in verse 12. If he turn not, he will whet his sword. The choice is clear, turn or burn.
No middle ground. And the imagery that follows is terrifying. It speaks to the certainty of justice. Not only is the sword sharpened, but the bow is bent, and the arrow is fitted to the string. The instruments are ready, longing, as Spurgeon puts it, to wet themselves with the blood of the persecutor.
There's a sense of inevitability, like that old Greek proverb, "The mill of God grinds late, but grinds to powder."
It does. And what's fascinating here is how the slanderer's own intense, malicious effort just results in absolute failure. Verse 14 uses three graphic pictures to show their undoing. Well, it's a perfect illustration of wasted, destructive energy. First, the slanderer travaileth with iniquity. He works hard with great pain and malice. Second, he hath conceived mischief. There's careful, dark planning. But what's the result of all that effort and pain?
He brought forth falsehood.
Exactly. The entire malicious enterprise, though agonizing and well-planned, results only in a lie, an empty, worthless birth.
So the wickedness isn't just defeated, it's shown to be ridiculous. It was a painful, elaborate effort that produced nothing of substance, only a lie that will quickly evaporate.
And that leads directly to the ultimate poetic justice in verses 15 and 16, the image of the hunter getting trapped. The wicked stoop to the dirty work of digging pitfalls for the righteous.
But the judgment is a spectacular reversal. What's that clear declaration in verse 15?
He made a pit and digged it, and is fallen into the ditch which he made. The curse is perfectly inverted. The slanderer's violence shall return upon his own head.
That's the ironclad law of retaliation in action. We see this principle everywhere. Curses really are like young chickens. They always come home to roost.
They do. Slander is an arrow shot upward that inevitably falls back on the archer. The instrument of torture meant for the innocent becomes the mechanism for the wicked's own defeat.
And that provides the spiritual rest David sought at the very beginning. He never had to lift a finger. He just appealed to the judge, and the judge used the enemy's own weapons to win the victory.
The deep insight there is that when you refuse to return malice for malice, you leave space for that divine law of return to operate fully. The saint just needs to wait, stand firm on integrity, and watch the slanderer tie himself into a catastrophic knot.
This entire journey, from the fear of the lion to the sight of the wicked falling into their own trap, it leads to the inevitable conclusion in phase 4, which is eternal praise in verse 17. The slandered saint is now just a singer.
Praise is the natural, inevitable occupation of the godly soul. David retires from the trial with a hymn. I will praise the Lord according to his righteousness, and will sing praise to the name of the Lord Most High. His praise isn't just emotional. It's based on God's character.
Right. It's God's righteousness that guarantees this defense, this vindication will always happen. So the final takeaway for you, the pilgrim, is that the ultimate protection is reliance on the judge who trieth the hearts and reins. You can rest assured, knowing that no weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that riseth against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn.
Your job is the internal work of integrity. God handles the external condemnation.
Exactly.
And this raises a final important question for you to mull over. Spurgeon reminds us that even after disproof, a man's reputation is fragile. It can be cut by a stranger's hand. So how do you ensure that your inner conviction of integrity, that knowledge that you are right before God, remains so strong that it utterly outweighs the pain of any external calumny the world throws at you?
How do you make your peace dependent only on the judge on the throne? Thank you for listening to the Pilgrim's Rest channel. You're welcome to like, comment, and share it with fellow pilgrims around you so that we can support and encourage one another on this journey of faith. Hope to see you next time.